a lot of workplaces don't offer life insurance or disability insurance benefits. And then when they do, they are often either not a great deal or they leave big gaps. And so why don't we talk about disability insurance first, because that's the one where it is often more useful to include it as part of your strategy. If you happen to have an employer who offers disability coverage through work, then it's really important to make sure you really know what that plan says. The way most plans are set up, they basically set you up to take at least a 40% cut in take-home pay if you actually go on disability leave. And that's like 40, right? Like it's a big cut.
Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Before we start the next conversation, I want to invite you to check out my amazing book, The Gift Inside, a powerful guide for healing your body, mind, and soul. Reclaim your strengths and awaken your true potential. Whether you are navigating heartbreak or simply seeking deeper fulfillment, this book offers the tools to turn your struggles into triumphs. It is time to unlock the gift within you. Available now on Amazon, or you can check it out on my website www.irinashehovtsov.com. Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today we have a special guest, Wallis Tsai. She is here to set the record straight when it comes to insurance. A former Goldman Sachs investment banker and hedge fund investor, Wallis founded Aboveboard Financial to bring transparency to an industry riddled with bad advice and conflicts of interest. She helps affluent professionals, high net worth families, and fiduciary advisors make smarter, data-driven decisions about life, disability, and long-term care insurance without the sales stuff. Get ready to cut through the noise and rethink what you know about insurance. Welcome, Wallis. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So please share with us who you are without the titles, from your own perspective.
Sure. My name is Wallis. I am a mom of two kids, currently ages 9 and 11, and I'm the founder and CEO of Aboveboard Financial. I started Aboveboard after I'd spent a little over 10 years of my career at Goldman Sachs, the investment bank, first as an investment banker and then as a hedge fund investor focused entirely on financial institutions. So understanding the inner workings of banks and insurance companies and investment managers. And one of the things that I really loved doing is, at the time, kind of as a side hobby, was advising friends and colleagues on the types of personal financial decisions they were thinking about. And I was really struck by how often they were getting really bad advice. And then when it came time for me to do some of these own transactions in my life, I was floored by just how often I had to rely on my own professional expertise to navigate successfully, not get taken for a ride, and actually get what I needed from the industry. And when I started Aboveboard with my co-founder, Nancy, who's a fantastic software developer, the two of us looked at a few different areas of financial services and decided to focus on insurance because it's frankly one of the worst corners of the financial services industry in terms of expensive mistakes and also missed opportunities. But it's also one of the most promising areas because if used correctly, these products can do tremendous good for people. It's just that it can often feel so hard to get honest, facts-based advice that makes sure that you get what you need, but nothing that you don't. And so that's why we're so excited about helping make insurance easier for people to navigate.
Totally. And wow, incredible. So from your own personal experience and starting out, you saw that need, that gap that needed to be filled, and you created this awesome company. So how do you help people?
So we work across life and disability and long-term care insurance. And the framework that we use for any client is that we want to make sure that disaster has been mitigated. And then if they have budget and interest, there are also a number of strategies you can apply that look at, I'll call it more fun topics like tax efficient investing, crafting a legacy for your loved ones in the future and after you're gone. But that first priority is always to make sure that if, God forbid, a difficult health situation or a terrible accident, that you and the people that you love most who rely on you would be okay, right? Like we don't control everything in life, no matter how much we try or would like to. And the one thing we can control, though, is making sure that if something bad comes up, for example, we've had clients who were super fit, healthy individuals in their 30s and 40s who just like got a late stage cancer diagnosis out of the blue, right? Like these things happen, and you can never completely make sure that through health and wellness efforts that you prevent that, right? It's like sometimes it just happens, but what you can do is make sure that that life event, which is catastrophic in so many ways, does not become a financial catastrophe too, right? And so with proper, I call it like disaster mitigation insurance, life and disability insurance, you can make sure that even if you're dealt like a really tough hand, you financially can stay in a place that's comfortable and secure for you and your loved ones.
Totally. I know that with certain jobs, they are provided with the life and disability insurance. Do you recommend that, outside of that, you should also create additional sources for that?
Yes, almost always yes. And I'll explain the reasons for that. So first of all, a lot of workplaces don't offer life insurance or disability insurance benefits. And then when they do, they are often either not a great deal or they leave big gaps. And so why don't we talk about disability insurance first, because that's the one where it is often more useful to include it as part of your strategy. So if you happen to have an employer who offers disability coverage through work, then it's really important to make sure you really know what that plan says. And that's actually something that we do for clients for free, because to apply for an individual policy, you have to disclose what your workplace plan is anyway. So we're happy to just tell you, right? And like most people don't enjoy wading through like the details of the stuff you download from your HR benefits portal, right? So we can take care of that. But the way most plans are set up, they basically set you up to take at least a 40% cut in take-home pay if you actually go on disability leave. And that's like 40, right? Like it's a big cut. Most people's household budgets are not set up in a way where they could comfortably absorb a 40% drop in pay. And one of the great things you can do with disability insurance is get a supplemental plan that plugs some or all of that gap, so that if, God forbid, you do get that tough message after the annual mammogram or the colonoscopy or what have you, you at least know that like, okay, money-wise, my life is going to continue to feel pretty similar, and I can focus my energy on navigating this health matter. And the other cool thing about having your own disability policy is that it gives you flexibility, because a lot of those policies include a clause where if your workplace drops benefits, or more likely, like if you go to a job where the benefits are just lower or non-existent, you have a right to increase your own coverage without having to prove you're still healthy. So it can give you a lot of freedom in life to never feel like you're beholden to an employer because you need the benefits, right? Like if otherwise you really don't like working there anymore, you'd love to leave, but like you can't, right? It can help you make sure that you're never in that position. Now, you asked about life insurance too, and there are definitely some workplace life insurance plans. What we typically find is that the free life insurance that people might get automatically is usually way too small an amount once you actually need life insurance at all, which, especially for single parents, if you have kids depending on you, the free amount at work is almost never enough. And then the stuff that you're offered to buy, right, like when you're going through annual enrollment and kind of clicking through what you want and what you don't, a lot of people think that stuff is cheap. I have not seen one situation where it actually is. And to give you an example, we've helped clients who have survived a heart attack within the past 5 years get covered for less money than their workplace plan. Mm-hmm. So it's very rarely a good deal if you are otherwise generally insurable. Now, of course, there are a handful of folks who are not insurable. It's not super common, but it absolutely happens, right? So if somebody had a very recent cancer journey or recently completed like any number of medical treatments, you might find a period of time where you're not insurable, and then workplace can be super helpful, but generally it's not your best option.
Wow, I didn't know all that.
Yeah, no, it's a lot to navigate, right? And like, this is like one corner of your workplace benefits. Like that's even before you get to all the other stuff. So we often help people navigate this stuff and figure out like, well, what's my best deal? What should I do? So clarifying that is really helpful. And you're just honestly like knowing what you have is important, right? Because the worst, and we've seen this happen to people too, who hadn't worked with us before their health event came up, is if you think you have something and then you realize you don't. Right? It's like if you thought you had disability insurance, but what you actually have is like accidental death and dismemberment. It's like the worst situation because it's like, oh man, this person thought they were prepared and they totally weren't. They just have a coverage that like literally doesn't do anything for them in this horrible situation they're in, but they honestly believed that it would, and so that's the thing we definitely want to try and prevent.
Yeah, totally. So for brand new single parent, what would you recommend? Is there like a checklist or what should they have in place when they become a single parent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that first, you want to make sure that you're set up to mitigate disaster should the unexpected occur, right? And so that usually involves making sure that you have enough life insurance and enough disability insurance if you're a single parent who's also working full-time. And so disability insurance is available when you're working full-time. Life insurance, you don't have to be working full-time. Life insurance is more flexible. And so we can help people navigate like, well, what is available for you now, given the place you're currently at. And on our website, we have a life insurance calculator. We also have a questionnaire that will give you instant quotes. And then we always have a expert human look at that too and really guide you through like, well, what's the best option given the facts you've shared with us. So I think the first thing to do is make sure, if God forbid I died prematurely, my loved ones, my kids would be okay, both from the perspective of premature death as well as like, what if I were just sick, right? Like about 1 in 7 long-term disabilities are caused by cancer. And so just thinking about like, well, what would we do if I was going through chemo and not able to work? How would that work for our family? And making sure that you have the protection in place to make sure that health catastrophe doesn't become a financial catastrophe. Now, once you've like mitigated disaster, right, with the life and disability insurance, then I think you can move to the bucket of like assessing whether or not the stuff that can optimize and help you get on a tax efficient wealth creation path is appropriate and good for you or not. And a lot of that varies based on a person's financial situation. So we want to make sure that people who are thinking about permanent life insurance are going to be happy and able to sustain that policy for the long term. And so we actually have a tool on our website called the Financial Action Plan, where you answer a few short questions and then we present you with a list of priorities. And we like that tool because it helps us understand, if somebody tells us, for example, and it's oftentimes like for some people, the path to becoming a single parent can be very financially disruptive, right? Maybe there's some credit card debt in the picture, or like they're kind of working their way through to figure out what this new normal looks like. Our advice generally in that situation is you want to make sure that you like pay down credit card debt, make sure you're taking advantage of other good opportunities, like if you have a 401k with an employer match, make sure that stuff is being done first before permanent insurance makes sense. And one of the great things about term life insurance is that most of those policies have an option to convert to permanent insurance later. So if a single parent kind of feels like, you know what, I like this idea of permanent insurance, but man, like my financial situation doesn't feel super secure today, then a great choice can be get some term insurance now, which is a ton cheaper and hedges that risk of premature death. And then, a few years from now, you can reassess your situation and we can help you decide, like, does it make sense now? And you still have that option available. So I think that's a really smart way to balance if there's any sort of mismatch between what you'd like to have available financially and like what actually kind of makes sense in one situation today. And then the other thing I'll mention, just because we've seen this for a number of single parents, is that sometimes when somebody was previously partnered and then becomes a single parent, they might have existing coverage where they're kind of like, oh man, like, I don't know what this thing is. Like my ex-spouse's like college roommate sold this to us years ago. And I know it's there, but I kind of don't understand what it is or how it works or if it still makes sense. And we have like an existing policy review service where we can help you like get to the bottom of that to make sure that if you're also figuring out what you want to do with some coverage that maybe wasn't totally your decision in the first place, we can help you assess like, well, is this a smart idea or not? Should you keep paying into this going forward? Or should you drop it or switch to something else? So that's something available for people to keep in mind too, understanding what you already have.
Awesome. Yeah, you're so right. We gotta know what we have before we dive in and, explore other opportunities. Thank you. Is there any book on the subject that you can recommend?
It's funny. I would say that I haven't found like a great book on insurance, which is not a totally shocking thing either. I get that insurance is not the most like exciting or interesting thing to talk about. It's funny because I teach a class at Harvard Business School as a guest lecturer once a year. I've done it for years, and there was one year where I was kind of like getting ready before the class, stop by to kind of like tidy up before going into the classroom, and I heard two students in the ladies' room going, "Oh man, we have the insurance segment. Yeah, this is going to be so boring." I actually started my class with like acknowledging that conversation and like my goal of making it entertaining and fun. I have to say, like, I understand why there's not a cool book about insurance. I have not found one yet myself. I don't even know, honestly, if I would try to write it. I feel like insurance can be fun and interesting if you talk about it, because there's a lot of humanity involved in insurance, right? Like a lot of human stories, and it connects with things that are fundamentally beautiful, like people you love, causes you care about, the life you want to have, right? So there are a lot of beautiful elements of insurance, but it's not like the greatest thing to read about either. So I don't have a book about insurance. I was reading a book recently about parenting, which I thought was fantastic. That I'm happy to share. That's an easier topic to write good books about. So I read this book called Never Enough by Jennifer Braheny Wallis, and it was fantastic. I ended up going to a talk that she did as well. And it's the premise of it, which you might guess from the title, Never Enough, is that parenting has become increasingly focused on high pressure and achievement. I mean, she explores like, well, where might that be coming from? I think a lot of us have recollections of like, I know for me personally, it's like, I watched a fair bit of TV growing up as a child, right? I grew up in Cleveland, outside Cleveland, Ohio, watched a fair bit of TV, had a lot of just kind of time doing whatever. And I think nowadays, like, a lot of us feel like, wow, my kid has a real schedule. This is like pretty intense, pretty high pressure. And she looks at like, well, why is that? And also how you can kind of dial that back and create a family value structure around communicating to your kids that they matter and helping your kids figure out how they matter in the world, not just to you and the other members of the family, but also to other people and the world generally, right? Like, what is it that they want to contribute and bring to the world? And so she kind of explores this idea of like, well, how can we approach engagement with life and achievement in a way that's more connected to a genuine sense of what you value, rather than like checking a bunch of boxes related to resume building or what a college consultant told you should be doing. And how do you kind of connect with that true intention to do something that's meaningful to you and meaningful to others?
Totally, I love it.
It does not talk about insurance. It's a very good book.
No, but on parenting, you're right. Never enough, always striving for achievement, and where is that balance that we can create for ourselves and our kids? Awesome. What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
Yeah, so I guess reflecting on my own experience as a parent, and like I said, they're 9 and 11, almost 12. My son would be quick to mention that he's turning 12 in 2 weeks. But I would say that if I had to pick one, maybe like empathy towards others and also oneself, kindness towards yourself too, and empathy towards others, and the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, respect different perspectives, even if they're different from what you hold, understand people's situation and motivations, and have humanity towards other people and also kindness towards yourself. And I think these two things are linked, right? Like the ability to be kind to yourself often enhances your ability to have empathy for others. And so one of the things that I'm doing with my kids is I'm trying to cultivate that sense of kindness to self, kindness to others.
You're right, because I think it all starts with you. If you don't have it inside of you, how can you show it to others?
Exactly. And I think that people who feel judged and disappointed and sort of disenfranchised, like unable to be the person they want to be, and can feel that sense of disappointment and anger can also be directed outwards. And so how do we raise our kids to live with joy, recognizing that there are challenges in life, right? Sometimes difficult stuff comes up, there are sometimes disappointments, and how do you navigate through those moments with grace and kindness, both to yourself and to the people around you?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. What is your superpower if you had to pick one?
Yeah, I would say that I have an unusual drive to fix things that I see as broken. I'm very action oriented, and I will, if I find that something like isn't right in the world, I just become like laser focused on like, okay, like I've got to make this better, right? And I think that that's kind of like the origin story of Aboveboard too, where it's like, man, like insurance can do so much good for people when it's used correctly. And sadly, at this point, we've met a number of families where they came to us, like, frankly, a little too late, right? Where like one parent had already received like a life-threatening diagnosis and they were not prepared for that from an insurance perspective. And so they were like, wait, in these examples, it was like two-parent families, but they're like, we got to make sure that the other parent doesn't make the same mistake. But it's like kind of heartbreaking too, because it's just like, oh man, like if we had just gotten that to them like a year earlier or 2 years earlier, this could have been so much better for everybody. And so I think the fact that, and oftentimes behind that fact pattern, there's like a history or a story where like at some point they tried to get coverage and it was just a really bad experience. They were like, somebody was pushing a bunch of stuff that they kind of sensed like probably wasn't a great idea. But instead of just like getting some coverage in place from a different source, they just kind of got busy and backed away and didn't take care of it. And then it's like, you get that diagnosis and it's like just your perspective on the world changes, right? And it's like, man, like to add financial distress to that horrible moment too, it's just like such a missed opportunity. So seeing how hard it is for people to navigate successfully really motivated me to be like, we have to fix that. And so I think that that's something that it doesn't just come up with Aboveboard, but it's actually in some ways a superpower, but also something I have to actively monitor to make sure I don't overextend myself, right? Because if you're like trying to fix everything you see that could be better, then like quickly you're doing so much that no human being could like sustain that in a 24-hour day. And so I think it's a superpower in some ways, but also something that, like most good things, taken to an extreme, it can become a problem too. And so that's what I try to balance for myself.
Totally, yeah, you're so right. It could be a kryptonite when you're trying to, help in many different areas and then getting depleted as a result.
Totally.
Awesome. I love that. That is an amazing superpower. Kudos to you for creating Above Financial. I think it's such a tremendous help and filling the gap of the needs, because oftentimes insurance we don't have positive feelings about it. It's like an additional expense or an additional thing, but you shining the light of how it can help, how it can be beneficial, especially in those life-threatening conditions that we never expect, because we live a life and when something happens and we are not protected, it could be devastating. So thank you so much for creating your company and helping people see the light in insurance and creating kind of a better understanding for themselves and creating that level of support. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
I guess one thing I would mention is just long-term care coverage. And I would say that for many single parents, when you've got kids at home and you're kind of like, if you're at work, like mid-career, it's still far off from retirement age. It's not something that crosses the radar necessarily, and I would absolutely prioritize getting life and disability insurance in order first. But I think it's also an important thing to visit at some point. And it's true for everybody. And I think especially for single parents, like making sure that you've thought about that scenario of like, okay, well, I'm busy with the day-to-day right now, but how do I want to set my future self up, right? Like when I envision myself, as a 75-year-old, as an 80-year-old, right? Like what choices do I want to have available to me? Realistically, what are the range of outcomes, right? And we know that, those of us who are lucky to see age 65 have about a 50% chance of needing long-term care at some point. And the right answer varies based on, a person's financial situation, but just thinking through that scenario, and that's something we help clients with, playing forward that vision of what your future self would want to be available, and how do you balance that with other things, right? Like we all hope that we're going to live the dream and be healthy and self-sufficient, and then, one day around when we're like 100 years old, just pass away peacefully in our sleep and everyone like celebrates our great life and it's awesome. But we kind of know that factually, like that's not everybody's future, right? And so like, how do you set things up where if you don't live the dream, that things are still like dignified and comfortable and you still feel good about the life that you're living. And I think advanced planning with long-term care can help achieve that. So that's worth considering as well after you've taken care of the life and disability stuff.
All right. So first life and disability and then long-term care. Awesome. Thank you. If people would like to connect and learn more about you, where would they go?
So we have a great website. My co-founder, Nancy, is a fantastic software developer, and you can come visit us at aboveboardfinancial.com. In fact, we've set up a special landing page for listeners to this podcast. It's aboveboardfinancial.com/single parent success. And you can get quotes. We have a very extensive blog where we provide a lot of educational resources because we want to make it easy for people to learn, and if they feel like it, self-educate, right? Some people are really into doing their own research. Other people just want us to help them get it done. We're happy to work with clients however they're most comfortable, but we are very big in consumer education. So we've got like a big blog with a lot of resources too, if people want that. And then we'd be happy to help clients think through their options. You can get that whole thing started by visiting us at aboveboardfinancial.com/single parent success.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll include everything in episode notes. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for creating this company and helping people feel better about insurance and create a better future for themselves. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. This has been great. I've really enjoyed talking with you.